Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. and Madam Speaker. The proposition tries to frame student loans as a solution for educational access, but in reality, the mechanism merely changes the timing of the burden and not the burden itself. Education is basic needs. Education is the action or process of teaching or becoming an educated person, not a financial that forces young people into debt before they even begin their careers. We firmly reject the adoption of a student loan mechanism in Indonesia because this policy fundamentally changed the purpose of education from a public right into a personal financial ability. We believe no student should be forced to begin adulthood under economic pressure simply for pursuing academic opportunities. This mechanism does not genuinely solve inequality in education. It merely delays the burden and transfers the responsibility from the state to individual students. Student loans create uncertainty. Why? Because students are expected to make a long-term financial commitments before they even have a stable income or begin employment. Why they have to face this when all they have to do is learning to be a better person in their life? We oppose this policy both in principle and mechanism way, as it risks trapping young people in financial rather than empowering them through education. In this speech, I will give three things why should we oppose this. First, it creates a dependency on students on unpredictable life. Second, that the government should expand educational support in public. And the third one, student loan forces students to associate education with fear and financial insecurity. Higher education should provide students with opportunities and security for their future, not place them under financial pressure before their adult life and haven't begun. Instead of guaranteeing accessibility, this mechanism forces young people to make a major financial commitment at an age where they are often have little understanding of economic risks. They are employment uncertainty or long-term repayment consequence. Financial inequality in education is treated as a personal burden that students must solve independently through borrowing money. As a result, students are no longer only worried about academic performance, but also about their future repayment, accumulating interest, and whether their eventual salary will even enough to survive while they paying off debt. The problem is that this system relies on the assumption that future income growth will always be sufficient to offset debt accumulation. In reality, labor markets are unpredictable. Economy downturns, unemployment, inflation, and low entry-level wages can easily prevent graduates from repaying loans comfortably. The future economy is completely unpredictable, and that is exactly why a student loan mechanism is really dangerous for the young student. No one can make sure what economic condition will look like in the next 5 or 10 years. A university student should not be forced to build their future depending on a certain economic outcomes just to justify taking an educational debt. Under this mechanism, students are expected to believe that future salaries and job opportunities will eventually be enough to repay their loans comfortably. As a result, many young adults lose economic independence before they even fully enter society. Education should empower students to build a secure future, not force them into a long-term vulnerability that depends entirely on whether the economy happens to remain stable. Second, does the limitation of scholarship justify replacing educational inequality with debt? In fact, a student loan mechanism can make inequality even worse because students from disadvantaged backgrounds will carry far greater financial risks compared to wealthier students. Forcing students into debt simply shifts the burden of unequal access onto individuals instead of improving their self-itself. This mechanism widens inequality because not all students begin from the same level of financial security. Students from the wealthier families can recover more easily from debt due to stronger family support, better professional connections, and greater financial safety nets. Meanwhile, the lower economically students are pressured to prioritize repayment over personal development. Instead of gaining freedom after graduation, Many of them become trapped in financial dependence and instability for years. That pressure can also influence the purpose of learning itself. Students may feel forced to choose career based purely on salary potential rather than passion, skills, or social contribution because they urgently need stable income to repay loans. Limited scholarship should encourage government and institutions to improve public educational support and not normalizing debt. There are many alternatives that can expand access without placing students under financial risks, such as increasing state investment in public universities, reducing tuition costs, or maybe strengthening partnership between universities and industries to provide funded education programs. These approaches address affordability while still protecting students' future economic independence. Next, a student loan places young people under constant pressure before they achieve financial stability. Instead of allowing students to focus entirely on academic growth and personal development, this policy forces them to continually think about repayment. Education should provide security and opportunity, yet this mechanism attaches uncertainty and a long-term burden to learning process itself. And this pattern has already been widely discussed in countries with established student loan system, especially in the United States, where studies and public discussion frequently link to student debt with stress, burnout, and reduced life satisfaction among graduates. This shows that student loans do not simply function as a financial assistance, a system that forces students to carry years of certainty and pressure merely to access education cannot truly be considered empowering. All in all, we ask everyone in this room to look beyond the illusion of accessibility that this policy tries to sell. Student loans do not remove educational inequality, they merely postpone the burden and transfer the risks onto students themselves. We should not normalize debt from the beginning of adulthood and carry years of financial pressure simply for pursuing education. For this reason, we strongly urge this House to oppose the adoption of a student loan mechanism in Indonesia, since we were not in a stable condition of economy and still experiences large educational and economic inequality between regions and social classes. Most important now is education in Indonesia should be expanded through stronger public investment and structural support. Because once that becomes the foundation of educational access, it is the most vulnerable students who will suffer the longest consequence. Thank you.